Okay, welcome to our discussion of Stage 31, the About the Language 1 review, where we talk about ablatives absolute. So, an ablative absolute is a combination of a noun in the ablative and a participle, whether that's a present active participle, a perfect passive participle, or a perfect active participle. So, it's an ablative of a noun plus a participle agreeing with that ablative, and it's absolute. What does that mean? Think of an absolute ruler. An absolute ruler rules all by himself. He doesn't have to take advice from anyone else. So an ablative absolute is all by itself in a sentence. It's not involved grammatically with the rest of the sentence. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. So first, some examples with the present active participle. I'll start here. Hostibus effugientibus milites orbem deleverunt. So here's our ablative absolute. We've got a noun in the ablative and a present active participle that modifies it. With the enemies escaping, the soldiers destroyed the city. So with the enemies escaping. And that's how I like to translate a ablative absolute that has a present active participle in it with the blank blanking, with the enemies escaping, the soldiers destroyed the town. You can get fancy and say when the enemies were escaping or since the enemies were escaping, but the easiest way is definitely with the enemies escaping, the soldiers destroyed the town. Here's a little more complicated one. Militibus orbem circumvenientibus, cives perterriti erant. So here we have our ablative of a noun. We have our participle modifying it, but remember, participles are verbal adjectives. So they're adjectives, they modify a noun, case number and gender, but they also still retain some of the functions of a verb. So this one is taking a direct object. So with the soldiers surrounding the city, the citizens were terrified. One more. Gladiatore in amphitheatro fortiter pugnante, omnes spectatores valde plaudebant. So here's our ablative absolute. It's a nice long one because here we have a prepositional phrase and an adverb. So with the gladiator fighting bravely in the amphitheater, all the spectators were clapping a lot. Now let's look at some examples with a perfect passive participle. Now with the present active participle, we translated with the blank blanking. With the perfect passive participle, it's with the blank having been blanked. So, hostibus superatis, milites dormiant. With the enemies having been conquered, the soldiers sleep. Opere confecto fabri domum redibant. With the work having been finished, the workers were returning home. And here's a longer one. Domino hasta graviter vulnerato, vilicus medicum arcesivit. With the master having been wounded by a spear gravely. So with the master having been wounded gravely by a spear, the steward summoned a doctor. Finally, let's look at some examples with the perfect active or deponent participle. So these we're going to translate with the blank having blanked. So first, domina egressa servi laetissime dormiebant. With the mistress having left, there's our ablative absolute. The slaves very happily were sleeping. Let's look another one. Agricola multiverba locuto, milites magnum clamorum sustulerunt. So here's our ablative absolute. Locuto is ablative masculine singular to modify Agricola. So with Agricola having spoken, many words. That's the direct object. The soldiers raised a great shout. One more. Feminis deam precatis, sacerdotes victimas sacrifica verunt. So, with the women having prayed to the goddess, so precatis modifies feminis, deam is the direct object of that participle. With the women having prayed to the goddess, the priests sacrificed the victims. And there you have it, ablatives absolute.